Hello everyone. Today I wish to make a video depicting some of the lies that revolve around renewable energy, because about half of it is a complete scam. And so whenever people use a buzzword like renewable energy, I find it in I find it aggravating. We're going to start off with electric vehicles, right? They use about zero point 0.1 tons more steel on average than normal internal combustion engine vehicles. This goes to the protection and securing of the battery versus what would be used in the engine bay, right? You got to remember the car has the engine bay, it's got a huge frame around the engine, as well as any steel that might be used in the engine. The battery takes all that steel that would be used and then some, and they still exceed normal internal combustion engine cars. So they're worse for the environment upon production. Not to mention the batteries are absolutely horrible. It is Donut Media a while back did a video talking about it and said that it takes about 13 years before an electric vehicle would become realistically better for the environment than a normal internal combustion engine car, taking into account the fact that like 20% of our waste is from not waste, 20% of our energy comes from oil, and then the stuff from coal and all these other things. Now we're looking at the contents of the batteries. The two big ones are lithium and cobalt. Lithium, our mining for it destroys habitats. We basically build giant quarries. It's kind of sad, but and there's just not it's not a very high production rate of batteries in the world. We are looking at things like those salt batteries, and I think we're looking at like diamond batteries right now or something like that. I don't know. I heard about it from a stepdad. I can't confirm. But the other big one is cobalt, which is sourced from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Does 73% of the global output, and it's bad. It's really bad because that's interesting. I've never seen that before. But no, basically use men, women, and children, and use indentured servitude labor forces. Like your EVs are literally made from dead children, right? The harvesting of it isn't safe for people. Like the same thing that makes lead poisonous makes cobalt poisonous to people, which mainly means contact. And they have these people digging in the mud for this shit. Um, and frightening is not very ethical at all. And so it's just bad. Now, to Tesla's credit, Tesla is the only company that I know of actually actively reduces the amount of cobalt in the batteries. Downside to that is that you can pull a whole planned obsolescence with that, because your battery's not going to last as long because it's not nearly as good because it doesn't have any cobalt. So the entire situation is just kind of screwed. And then you look at wind. We're going to start with wind whenever it comes to renewable energy. Wind turbines are, if we look at this, right? These blades are made from fiberglass. Fiberglass is a mixture of glass and resin, basically a plastic. And the main shaft is steel. These are fiberglass because they have to be strong but light enough to be able to swing around. The edges of these usually get up to about 64 kilometers an hour, if I remember correctly, about a little bit under 40 miles an hour. And so spinning so fast, it's got to be able to deal with the stresses, which means that wind turbines need maintenance about once every 5 years. These blades get replaced every 9 years. Then you obviously have foundation of steel and reinforced concrete and a steel shaft. We make 70% of steel is made from coal, and yeah, 1 megawatt, 220 tons of coal, that all fun stuff. 220 small cars, right? Wind turbines alone, a small car is actually pretty good for the environment because, well, it's small, right? It's not gonna, well, I say pretty good for the environment. It's still bad, right? It's pushing out them fucking CO2 emissions. But we're talking like an old Volkswagen Beetle. It's not as bad as modern cars, for one, and it's not as bad as some of these EVs are getting. Because a small car would have probably about zero 0.8 or 0.9, maybe even 0.7 tons of steel, right? And so we're talking about real impact. What is that? Where is it? Here we are. This is a problem, right? And we get, yeah, 66 to 79% of the total mass is steel. And fiberglass resin, or plastic, is 11 to 16%. Iron or cast iron is basically more steel, right? We know that steel, the difference between iron and steel is the not copper, coal. Not just coal, carbon is the big one. Is the amount of carbon in its components, right? And everything else here is pretty negligible. And so adding this in, optimistically 69%. Pessimistically, we're talking like, what is that, 96%? But I mean, obviously it's not obvious. None of this would be able to scale in. And keep in mind, it does change. So let's look at this optimistically. 71, 72, 73% of the wind turbine is steel. That's really, really bad, right? And then look at the average number of wind turbines per farm. 50. This is for one, right? You look at this, right? I actually forgot to bring this up. 600 to 1,000 tons of concrete and 165 tons of steel. You gotta remember, these wind turbine blades are really big, which means they use thick steel, right? And remember, the edges of these blades are going around and around and around at 64 kilometers an hour consistently, which means at the base, the shaft has to be able to support that. That means it needs to be stronger. And then if it's stronger, it's going to be heavier, which means you need more steel. And it becomes this whole recursive loop, which is quite disappointing. But 165 tons of steel, and then you go right here, and you basically multiply it by 50. Now, the biggest one in the nation is in California, which is 586. But we already know that California is filled with a whole bunch of pipe dreams of some folks that really just can't be true. Now, you look at this, you look at how much steel is in a nuclear plant, and luckily, this one was great because it gave me a comparison to a modern windmill. Tons of steel, obviously, in a power plant versus one windmill, absolutely outclasses it. You'd think, oh, it's way worse. No, because we're talking about efficiency, right? Now, this is per energy produced, so for one windmill spinning around, per its tons of steel used for it, which means it's its own efficiency, which means that these two are on an even playing field for these two, because it compares it to the energy produced. And nuclear reactors completely outscale windmills whenever it comes to that, because nuclear reactors are incredibly energy dense. Keep in mind, a windmill is usually part of a multi-layered windmills are usually part of a multi-layered plan to power cities. This is part of why California has so many electrical problems. Whereas not concrete, silly me. Whereas nuclear reactors are usually built to power an entire city. If it's big enough, then you might have some small things supplementing it, or it might also bring in some energy from outside. Right? So completely outclasses it on concrete, completely outclasses it on steel. If you want to be green, you go nuclear. That's just how it is at the end of the day, because even if you factor in harvesting of the uranium, this comparison more than makes up for it because of this, right? Because you get 50 in the average wind farm, because that's just the reality of things. Now, these we're talking about terawatt hour, TWHs if you're curious, they're terawatt hours. Terawatt is about a trillion more than a watt. This unit energy is equal to 10 raised to the power 12 watt hours. So those are kilowatts, megawatts. So it's 1 million, 1 billion, and kilo is 1,000. So yeah, 1 trillion watts. Now we look at the deaths produced, right? Is this death? No, these are major energy sources. So this is a different one. 31% of our energy comes from natural gas. I would like to diminish that, right? And you also get petroleum. And so basically, well over half. This is bad, right? Freaking coal is the single worst source of energy that you could really realistically ask for. Fucking wood is better because while it's not as energy dense, you can realistically kind of burn it twice as long as you do it smart. Downside is that it's just not effective for its weight. Coal outclasses wood whenever it comes to weight versus weight and energy efficiency. But I would rather burn oil than coal, because oil burns way cleaner than coal. There's a reason why everyone in fucking China basically smokes a pack of cigarettes every time they go outside, and everyone in the US doesn't. It's just air. And it's because we burn oil, and it's not as bad as coal. Coal is terrible. I would like to get rid of this, right? Of course. And then I would like to get this bigger, and I'd like to reduce this, because wind, as I've already explained, is a scam. Now, with that out of the way, we start talking about deaths per year of energy production. And which one was it? Yeah, this one, I think. There we go. Oh, wait, that's this guy. But no, in 2018, estimated that 3.6 million people die from fossil fuels yearly. This includes coal. So this is not entirely accurate whenever it comes to per division. And in 2021, estimate more than double this figure, but it's an estimation. But yeah, man, air pollution, especially in China, is really, really bad. Because then we look at this mortality rate: brown coal, and oil. Brown coal, I don't actually know what the difference is that between that, but remember, these two basically pair together. They're both coal, and they're damn near 3 times more than oil, right? Oil isn't that bad when you compare it to coal. For the love of God, get rid of coal, and also try to diminish oil. that should be our objective. Now, one upside is the recycling of turbines, but we'll get into that in a second. Biomass is, I assume, wood, and then we get natural gas, which kills less than oil because it's easier to control for the most part. You spill oil, you get oil all over the ground, takes a while to evaporate, and it's more, for the most part, energy dense than natural gas. Natural gas, you get a leak, it kind of just goes back into the air, which natural gas kind of, for the most part, does slowly leak into the air anyways. The only natural gas that we really get to use is the stuff that's trapped underground. And so it doesn't really do all that much. It just breaks down into carbon dioxide and water in the atmosphere, if I remember correctly. Then you get hydroelectric, which kills a surprisingly large amount of people. Then you get wind, and then nuclear, and then solar from mortality rates. Nuclear is less than wind, and it's less than hydroelectric. Now, I think hydroelectric, whenever that takes into account potentially divers and people going through waterfalls and all these other things, right? You put a water mill along a river, and you're gonna get fucked up from it. Or if you die on a dam, I don't know how accurate this one is, but either way, this is also per 1,000 terawatt hours, right? So it's 32 deaths per terawatt hour. Oil is still pretty damn bad, let's be honest. If we could somehow convert oil and natural gas, we'd probably still be better off. And also look at this: oil versus natural gas deaths, and then we look at energy sources, and natural gas is outdoing oil, plant liquids, to an extent, right? That's pretty impressive in my opinion, right? That natural gas is that safe despite outpowering oil. But like, these are basically, this puts into a picture what we realistically should be aiming for. Get the fuck rid of coal. Try to keep natural gas, because this is invaluable whenever it comes to safety for people. And a lot of our systems are already built for it. And try to get nuclear up. Don't build wind. It kills birds and it kills people, and it's horrible for the environment inadvertently. And wind is also pretty high, just because people like fall off the turbines. But then you go, how many birds went in danger from wind so far? This one, here's a fun fact. Wind turbines do kill a shitload of birds, right? We're talking in the hundreds of thousands at minimum. But they haven't really made too many almost extinct. Most of the birds that hit windmills also hit things like skyscrapers and windows, right? They've been doing this all along. They just got hit by something else. Now here's the scary part. We have two forms of recycling. Most of it, the vast majority, is they're disposed of in landfills, which means it's not really green energy, because it's just going into the trash and breaking down to become more fucking carbs. Carbon stuff that is going to be slowly released. Now, here's the crazy one, right? You look at what companies, Carbon Rivers is one that gets the glass fibers out from the turbine blades, and Viola is funded by GM to pulverize the blade for cement manufacturing, because cement manufacturing uses coal, and so they burn the blades, they burn the plastic, and so these guys burn it to get the glass, and these guys burn it to make concrete, which means that we're burning it. Yeah, it replaces the coal used in the fire for kilns. The fiberglass is not actually put in cement. It doesn't. It's not how it works. And actually, I'm actually kind of curious about this. 6 years and 7 months to pay off the initial cost to manufacture and install a turbine, and will generate energy for another 19 years, which means it gets its blades replaced realistically 2 times. So that's another thing to keep in mind. These things go through about 9 blades. Now, a lot of people I've been hearing say that Chinese solar panels are worse. We're going on to solar panels now, and they're about as good as any others according to solarreviews.com. Now you might say that they might be biased towards China. There's a lot of Chinese bias whenever it comes to our media. Fair enough. Solar panels are harmful to the environment because there's a few toxic materials in solar panel production, and if you do a large portion of them, whenever you do economies of scale, there's 340 or so million people in the US, and you get millions and millions of people, tens of millions of people, maybe even using solar panels. Whenever these solar panels break down, whenever they're done, and you have to replace them, you're tossing stuff into the trash. And so this is a big worry. But this is the big one. Whenever it comes to cheaper ones, lead and cadmium are used. Whenever it comes to you, Chinese solar panels aren't going to really change all that much. Whenever it comes to the environment, it's a bit worse. And then we look at, this. So solar panels are really expensive. We're looking at about $113 per month until you pay it off, right? Which isn't much. But here's a scary thing, right? People talk about their problems with solar panels, and yeah, like, why am I not saving money with solar panels? This one says poor insulation, but basically what it ends up breaking down to is two things. One, energy manufacturers still want to make money, and two, they do that by leasing solar panels. Should you get a solar panel lease? And no. This one says we recommend signing a solar lease in cases where customers do not have options for a cash purchase or solar loan. What these energy providers do is they remove the ability for you to buy the solar panels so that they can lease it out to you, which means it's still theirs. This is like apartment rent. And so you're still paying for electricity, but you're paying for the electricity that's coming from your own roof. And then any of your extra electricity, they just get to use. And you don't get any like credits or freaking, like, I know that sometimes if you freaking end up putting more electricity into the system than you took out because of having solar panels on your roof that you own, you could actually get money for that. No, you don't get that with leases. It absolutely fucks you. Do not ever lease a solar panel. If you're going to get a solar panel, buy it outright. Please. Like, you look at this, literally immediately, is not a good idea from a financial perspective. We simply do not recommend it. In most cases, you'll save much more money in the long run by exploring other financing options, like getting a loan from your bank to buy the solar panel. Literally right below it. This is just the point. Now, hydroelectric energy is really expensive. You might look at the media and they talk about it. It's really expensive. The reason why is because a lot of it's in dams, or they're really big, right? And so, like this, civil construction works, which is dams, tunnels, and other necessary infrastructure. So if you have an aqueduct, if you have any sort of energy storage from a river, any rerouting of a river, they're probably going to put hydroelectric power in it. And hydroelectric for fresh water is good, right? In almost every sense, because it's fast moving current. It's not a problem. It doesn't have salt in it. It's going to be expensive, but it'll pay for itself, right? The city near Niagara Falls is powered by Niagara Falls because Nikola Tesla built one of the first hydroelectric power plants in it and proved that it was a viable source of energy. Freshwater hydroelectric is good. It is one of the parts that's not a scam, similar to solar. As long as you don't fuck yourself, it's good. The ocean has significant potential because of the tides, but it is absolutely horrible because you can't use steel or concrete for the most part because the water's stronger, it has more torque. Just as windmills, whenever they start spinning too fast, fall apart. Well, water has more torque, so it doesn't need to move nearly as fast, right? It's much stronger, and the salt degrades steel and absolutely rips it apart. And so oceanic hydroelectric is going to be incredibly expensive and not the best for power, because it's just screwy. And then another problem is that you got to make sure it doesn't damage other like coral reefs or other environments. It's just bad. Like, another reason why you can't use steel is because if the steel doesn't break down, coral reefs just start building on it. Like, we literally toss old cars into the ocean sometimes instead of crushing them, because they can help the development of reefs, and it's really actually good for the environment. But like, they're stripped, don't get me wrong, they take out the seats and all sorts of stuff. It's like a steel chassis. But yeah, that's bad. Ocean energy is a scam. I mean, there's a reason why the UK started putting wind in the ocean rather than just putting ocean power, you know? Then you look at wind farm batteries. This is another thing. Whenever wind farms are high on energy, but there's no demand, they have to store it because they're still generating the electricity. Otherwise, it's just waste. And when there's high demand and wind farms aren't generating enough, you need there to be some sort of reliable alternative, especially if there isn't enough producing. This is why California is rolling blackouts, is because batteries for wind farms, which wind farms do have batteries, aren't enough. Now, obviously you've seen the videos where they have the wind turbine at the bottom, they have a battery. They don't really do that. They do a battery that is roughly the size of 2 semi-trailers. There's 80 tons of battery, and it stores 72 megawatt hours of electricity. And so the point of that is that, like this, when literally what I just said right here, when wind blows, batteries are charged. When wind comes down, batteries supplement the power flow. This is exactly it. They use lithium ion batteries though, and so they also use these. They also use cobalt, they also use lithium. This is why you hear all these conservative guys saying we don't have the lithium production for this. It's because everything green needs a battery. You know, you talk about putting power walls, Tesla power walls in your home whenever you had the solar roofs and whatnot. That's why, because that's a lithium ion battery. Every source of renewable energy is screwed, except for hydroelectric to an extent. So we go right here and here. Right, so right here, that's leasing. All right. And so this is just scary. Again, you need an alternative battery if you want any of this to work. It's screwed. And then we go right here. Let's look at how much uranium a power plant uses. 27 tons of uranium. And this is over a year. 27 tons in a year. So that's 27 cars. That is not a lot. That's, that's literally 2 tons a month to power an entire city, which one was it? Literally, again, and it's this kind of cleanliness. Now, we go back here. And so this is actually really eye-opening. It's required each year for a 1,000 megawatt electric pressure MWE pressurized water reactor, which is just a normal one. And in contrast, a coal power station of equivalent size requires more than 2.5 million tons of coal. 2.5 million tons of coal to produce the same energy as 27. To be fair, coal isn't that energy dense, but whenever we're talking energy density, uranium is king. Nothing comes close. For this one, it was talking about 26 MTs. No, 1 gigawatt nuclear power plant, which would be about 20,000 to 400,000 tons of ore, processing it into 27.6 tons, megatons, I guess, of uranium fuel, and disposing of 27.6 tons of highly radioactive spent fuel. So megatons to tons, that's about a ratio of 1,000 or 100 maybe. and then of which 90% by volume is low level waste, 7% is intermediate level waste, and 3% is high level waste. Now, intermediate level waste is kind of screwy because we go right here, it's a classification, and it's really just low level and high level. Do I still have this one? Yeah, they call it middle one transeric, and it's kind of ignorable. It kind of just classified into the other two. Now let's look up what is high level and low level. Low level includes waste items include items like gloves, tools, or machine parts that have been exposed to radioactive materials and makes up most of the volume of waste produced by plants. This 90%, this 70%, 70% is the water, right? They have to clean out the water. But you know, gloves, hard hats, these other things, that's considered radioactive waste because of OSHA standards and other such things. It's actually really good. 3% of the waste is high level, right? Now we go back here. That's low level. High level waste is mostly used fuel. And so that is the uranium. Those uranium fuel rods. I think that's really freaking cool because that shows how efficient these things are. You know, everyone talks about radioactive waste. Nah, man. It's all fucking gloves. You're not gonna die from gloves. Alright, and then I looked at this, and then we look at this. Where's majority coal? Alright, I went through this. Alright, so let's go back here. Yeah, I looked up intermediate level waste. Let's see if I can find it. So no, we're gonna look this up. Right. Should we look up nuclear storage? People talk about having to store it for thousands and thousands of years. No, we store it for a few hundred. 1. 2. Dry cask storage. These people can literally hug them and would get less radiation from eating a banana than from eating a banana or taking a flight. These things are what stores all of our nuclear waste. And we just ship them like this. They're a mixture of concrete, steel, and ceramics. These things have been tested by having trains slam into them. Let's just say that they are incredibly robust. One has never been cracked. Again, the one that was hit by a fucking train did not crack. It derailed the train. But again, this giant steel concrete structure has less concrete than a wind farm, which is funny to me. And so, yeah, that's my whole point, that like nuclear energy is not nearly as bad as everyone wants it to seem. Right now, there's a lot of theorizations about taking these and putting them underground, which is why people keep on talking about that. The downside is that if we bury it, then it's hard to see, and then if we forget about it, then we're fucked. Right? It's better to have it above the ground so that we can at least have some sort of a record of, hey, probably shouldn't go here, for one, and for two, we know what it is. And so if someone starts dying, right, someone breaks one open miraculously, right, takes a jackhammer for 4 or 5 hours at it or something, they know, oh shit, this is deadly, you know, in some sort of far off future where we might not have any knowledge, right? Maybe the government collapses 3 times over. People start dying from this. They know this is bad. People start dying in here. They just think the tunnel's cursed. I mean, they still not go there, but that's the whole point. And tunnels risk people digging down into it and stuff. But yeah, this is the water area whenever it comes to nuclear storage. Nuclear waste storage. But yeah, and so we just hold it for a few hundred years, potentially upwards of 1,000. People talk about how this is going to be so bad, but the thing is that landfills are far worse. Because a landfill, you're not going to realistically be able to build on, because it takes glass a million years to decompose. You know, it takes plastics just as long. We have no conception of plastic realistically being able to break down, other than that bacteria that we found in the ocean that is slowly eating the Pacific garbage patch. And so that was my whole point. That, again, about half of renewable energy is a scam, right? Because wind is an entire scam, and solar is a little bit of one, but it's worth it. And hydroelectric, about half of it is a scam. The part that they're trying to push into the ocean, that's a lie, dude. It's incredibly expensive. Now, hydroelectric dams, any kind of a water mill along a river, well, that's fine. Again, it's fresh water. It's not going to break down nearly as fast, for one. And for two, again, it actually produces good energy. We did tests back in the day where if you put, oceanic hydroelectric on each of the freaking shores of the U.S., right? East Coast and West Coast, it wouldn't even be able to power half the fucking U.S. It's the entire coast. And that's just my whole point. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about how there's a few lies whenever it comes to renewable energy, and that just from some quick Google searches, even you can figure out that the truth isn't that hard to find. I hope you guys have a good day. Merry Christmas. This is Young Shaman signing out.